This is the true story of the prophet who watched a field of dead bones stand up and walk, a priest in exile beside a foreign canal, 800 miles from the only temple he had ever known. The sky opens above his head, a throne, 4 faces, wheels covered in eyes, and then a voice. For more than a year, he lies on the ground in front of his own house, his body a prophecy his neighbors cannot read. He shaves his head with a sword, and he bakes bread over dung. His wife dies on the day the siege of Jerusalem begins, and God forbids him to weep. He watches the glory of the Lord walk out of his own temple. He watches a river flow from under a new temple, healing the deadest water on earth. And one day, God leads him in vision to a valley and asks, "Son of man, can these bones live? Stay with us until the end." Because the most extraordinary visions in the Old Testament were given to this one man on a riverbank in Babylon. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this, and comment the word "live" if you are ready to walk through the visions of Ezekiel with us. Let us begin. It was the 5th year of the exile of King Jehoiachin, the 4th month, the 5th day of the month. A 30-year-old priest named Ezekiel stood among the exiles beside an irrigation canal called the Chebar. He was the son of Buzi, of the priestly line. He should have been lighting incense in Jerusalem. Instead, he was a captive in Babylon, 800 miles east of his calling. The Babylonian army had stormed Jerusalem and dragged King Jehoiachin and 10,000 of his people away in chains. Ezekiel was one of them. Then, by the canal, the heavens opened above his head. A windstorm was coming from the north, and inside the storm was an immense cloud. Lightning flashed through the cloud, and a halo of brilliant light burned around it. At its center, something glowed white-hot, like metal in a furnace. Inside the glow, 4 creatures appeared. Each one had a human form, but each one had 4 faces and 4 wings. A man on the front, a lion on the right, an ox on the left, an eagle on the back. They moved together, never turning, fast as lightning. Beside each creature stood a wheel within a wheel, sparkling like topaz. The rims of the wheels were full of eyes that looked in every direction. The wings sounded like rushing water, like an army on the march. Above the creatures stretched a crystal dome. Above the dome stood a throne of deep blue stone. On the throne sat a figure shaped like a man, glowing the way the cloud had glowed, surrounded by light like a rainbow on a rainy day. This was the appearance of the likeness of the glory of the Lord. And when Ezekiel saw it, he fell face down in the dust. But the throne was not silent. A voice came from it, and it did not call Ezekiel by name. "Son of man, stand up on your feet, and I will speak to you." Son of man, a title that would land 93 times across this book, always pointed at Ezekiel. As God spoke, his spirit came into Ezekiel and lifted him to his feet. Then the voice gave him the assignment. "I am sending you to the Israelites, to a rebellious nation, to a people who are obstinate and stubborn. Do not be afraid, though briars and thorns are all around you, and you live among scorpions." Then a hand reached out from the throne, and in the hand was a scroll unrolled, written on both sides. The words on the scroll were lament, mourning, and woe. "Son of man, eat what is before you, eat this scroll. Then go and speak to the people of Israel." Ezekiel opened his mouth, and he ate the scroll, and it was sweet as honey. Then God named the job. "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me. When I say to a wicked person, 'You will surely die,' and you do not warn them, I will hold you accountable for their blood. A man on a city wall has one job, and when the army is coming, he blows the trumpet. If the people hear and ignore him, that is on them. If he never blows it, that is on him." But God did not just send Ezekiel to preach, he sent him to act. The body of the prophet himself would become the message. The commands came one after another in a single prophetic session, while Ezekiel listened. "Son of man, take a block of clay, put it in front of you, and draw the city of Jerusalem on it. Then lay siege to it. Lie on your left side, and put the sin of the people of Israel upon yourself, bearing their sin for the number of days you lie there. 390 days for the sin of Israel, and 40 more on your right side for the sin of Judah, 1 day for each year. Eat your food as you would a loaf of barley bread, and bake it in the sight of the people. using human waste for fuel. And for the first time in the book, the prophet pushed back. "Not so, sovereign Lord. I have never defiled myself." And God relented. "Very well. I will let you bake your bread over cow dung instead." The last command would not be performed until the long stretch was over. "Son of man, take a sharp sword. Use it as a razor to shave your head and your beard. Then take a set of scales and divide the hair." And in the same breath, God told him what the hair would mean. "A third of your people will die of plague or famine inside the city. A third will fall by the sword outside the walls, and a third I will scatter to the winds." Then Ezekiel began. He set up the brick, and around it he built siege works, ramps, and battering rams the size of his hand. He set an iron pan between himself and the brick, like a wall. Then he lay down on his left side beside it. For a priest, this was humiliating. Bread baked in public over dung, wheat mixed with barley, beans with lentils, 6 grains in one loaf, the food of a city under siege. Soon Jerusalem would eat the same. For over a year, Ezekiel lay on the ground in front of his own house, while neighbors walked past and stared. When the 430 days finally ended, he stood up, and he obeyed the last command. He shaved his head and his beard with the sword, and he divided the hair into 3 parts on the scales. 1/3 he burned inside the brick city, 1/3 he struck with the sword around it, and 1/3 he threw to the wind. Hair, brick, sword, and each one was Jerusalem. This was prophecy acted out in advance instead of spoken. If this story is already gripping you, subscribe now so the next one finds you, and share this with someone who thinks the Old Testament is boring. Because what happens next is one of the strangest visions in the entire Bible. One afternoon, the elders of Judah came and sat in the house of Ezekiel. While they sat there, the hand of the sovereign Lord fell on him. The figure from the throne stood before him again, glowing the same way he had glowed by the canal. A hand reached out and took Ezekiel by the hair, and the Spirit lifted him between earth and heaven, carrying him away in vision. His body stayed in the house in Babylon, but his eyes saw what no one else there could see. He found himself at the north gate of the temple in Jerusalem, the temple he had been born to serve. And there at the entrance stood an idol. "Son of man, do you see what they are doing? The utterly detestable things that will drive me far from my sanctuary." Then God showed him something worse, a hidden door in the temple wall, and told him to dig through it. Inside a sealed room, 70 elders of Israel stood in the dark, censers of incense in their hands. Crawling creatures and unclean animals were painted on every wall, and the leaders of the people of God were worshiping them in secret. In the dark they whispered, "The Lord does not see us. The Lord has forsaken the land." But in the vision, God was right there in the room with them, hearing every whisper. Outside in the courtyard, women wept for the Babylonian god Tammuz. And at the inner court, 25 men had turned their backs to the temple, bowing to the sun in the east. Still in the vision, Ezekiel watched judgment arrive. 6 executioners walked through the city, each with a weapon in his hand. A 7th, dressed in linen, went ahead of them with a riding kit at his side. God spoke to the man in linen, "Go throughout the city and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament over all the detestable things done in it." The man in linen obeyed, and he marked the few who grieved, and judgment passed over everyone who bore the mark. Then the glory of the Lord began to move. The glory was the visible presence of God on earth, the brightness that had lived above the Ark of the Covenant for as long as Israel had a temple. It was the same brightness Ezekiel had seen above the throne by the canal, and now it began to leave. It rose from above the cherubim inside the temple and stopped at the threshold, as if hesitating. The cherubim spread their wings, and the glory moved to the east gate, and there it paused again. From the east gate, God spoke to Ezekiel about the exiles far away in Babylon. "Although I sent them far away among the nations, yet for a little while I have been a sanctuary for them in the countries where they have gone." Then the glory left the city and stopped above the mountain east of it. God had walked out of his own house. The vision ended, and the Spirit returned Ezekiel to his house, where the elders of Judah were still sitting in front of him, and he told them everything he had seen. The exiles kept coming to Ezekiel for the word of the Lord. One day God gave him a story to tell them, the story of Jerusalem as if she were a person. She was born unwanted, her cord uncut, her body unwashed, thrown out into a field on the day of her birth, still in her own blood. No one came for her. Then a king passed by, and he saw her lying there. He said one word, live. He raised her, he bathed her, and he clothed her in fine linen and gold. He put a crown on her head, and he fed her honey and the finest flour. You became very beautiful and rose to be a queen, and your fame spread among the nations, because the splendor I had given you made your beauty perfect. Then she forgot where the beauty had come from. You trusted in your beauty and used your fame to give yourself to anyone who passed by. She took the gold and jewelry he had given her and melted them into idols, and she offered his food as incense to the statues. She built shrines on every street corner and gave herself to every nation around her, to Egypt, to Assyria, to the very Babylon that would one day carry her into exile. Then she did the thing the king had never imagined. You took your sons and daughters, whom you bore to me, and sacrificed them as food to the idols. In a valley outside Jerusalem called Hinnom, parents burned offerings to a god called Melech. And this was not metaphor. Judgment was coming, but it was not the last word God spoke over her. Yet I will remember the covenant I made with you in the days of your youth, and I will establish an everlasting covenant with you. Even after the betrayal, God would not let her ruin be the end of the story. A new covenant was coming, one that betrayal could not break. Years passed, and then one morning, God told Ezekiel to write down the exact date, the 9th year of exile, the 10th month, the 10th day. At that very moment, 800 miles west, the armies of Nebuchadnezzar were pitching their tents around Jerusalem. God was telling Ezekiel as it was happening, "Son of man, with one blow I am about to take from you the delight of your eyes. Yet do not lament or weep or shed any tears. Groan quietly and do not mourn for the dead." Before sundown, the dearest person in the life of Ezekiel would be gone. That evening his wife died. The next morning, Ezekiel did exactly as God had commanded. He went about his day with a hollow look and a closed mouth, while the neighbors watched. They finally asked the question they should have asked years ago. "Will you not tell us what these things have to do with us?" He answered, "I am about to desecrate my sanctuary, the stronghold in which you take pride, the delight of your eyes, and you will not mourn or weep, but will waste away because of your sins." The temple was the delight of the eyes of God, the way the wife of Ezekiel had been the delight of his. God was making them feel what he felt, through a grief his prophet had to carry first. The siege had begun that morning, and God gave him another command. "On the day a fugitive comes to tell you the news, your mouth will be opened. You will speak and be silent no longer, and so you will be a sign to them." From that day forward, Ezekiel kept silent about the fate of Jerusalem. The siege would last 1.5 years before the city finally fell. Almost 3 years passed, and rumors arrived with caravan traders, but no hard news. Then, before the news could come, God spoke to Ezekiel again. "Son of man, I have made you a watchman for the people of Israel. So hear the word I speak and give them warning from me." The job of the watchman, given a second time, the way an army reissues orders the night before the trumpet sounds. "As surely as I live, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your evil ways. Why will you die, people of Israel?" It was the warmest line God had spoken in this entire book. Then in the 12th year of exile, the 10th month, the 5th day, a man stumbled into the exile camp. He had escaped from Jerusalem, and he said 4 words, "The city has fallen," and the mouth of Ezekiel opened. He had been silent about Jerusalem since the day his wife died, and the silence broke that day. But what God said next was the bitterest line in the book. "My people come to you as they usually do, and sit before you to hear your words, but they do not put them into practice. To them, you are nothing more than one who sings love songs with a beautiful voice and plays an instrument well." The city was gone, and the temple was gone, and God spoke against the shepherds of Israel, the kings, the priests, and the prophets who had been supposed to lead his people, but had failed them. You have not strengthened the weak, or healed the sick, or bound up the injured. You have not brought back the strays or searched for the lost. You have ruled them harshly and brutally, and you have eaten the sheep instead of feeding them. So God said he would do the job himself. He would search for the sheep, gather them, and bring them home. And then he said something that made the exiles by the canal lean forward. I will place over them one shepherd, my servant David, and he will tend them and be their shepherd. But David had been dead for 400 years. God was not bringing him back. He was promising a shepherd in the line of David, a king the rest of the Bible would keep waiting for. 600 years later, the shepherd arrived, and he stood up and named himself, I am the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. Then God spoke the harder promise. I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit in you. I will remove from you your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh, and I will put my spirit in you. Not a better effort, and not a more obedient nation, but a surgery the people could not perform on themselves. After the city fell, another vision came to Ezekiel, and the hand of the Lord came upon him. The Spirit lifted him up and set him down in the middle of a valley, and the valley was full of bones. The bones covered the ground, and they were very dry. Then God asked him a question, Son of man, can these bones live? And Ezekiel answered, Sovereign Lord, you alone know. By that point in his life, Ezekiel refused to underestimate God. Prophesy to these bones and say to them, Dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. I will make breath enter you, and you will come to life. So Ezekiel opened his mouth and spoke the word of God over a graveyard, and a rattling rose from the valley. Bones moved across the dirt, bone to bone. Tendons stretched, muscle climbed over them, and skin covered everything. The valley filled with bodies, but none of them moved, for there was no breath in them. Prophesy to the breath, say to it, Come breath from the four winds and breathe into these slain, that they may live. Ezekiel spoke to the wind, and the wind came. Breath entered them. Their chests rose and their eyes opened. They stood up, a vast army alive. Then God explained what Ezekiel had seen. Son of man, these bones are the people of Israel. For they say, Our hope is gone, we are cut off. My people, I am going to open your graves and bring you up from them. The exiles were the bones. The exile itself had been the grave, and one day God would call them out of it. The vision ended, and Ezekiel was back in his house in Babylonia, and he told the exiles what they were going to become. 25 years had now passed since the exile began, and 14 years since the city fell. Then Ezekiel was given one last vision, and the Spirit took him to a very high mountain. From there he saw a new temple, and the structure was finished. And then he saw it, the glory of the God of Israel coming from the east. His voice was like the roar of rushing waters, and the land was radiant with his glory. The glory came back from the same direction it had left. It passed through the east gate and filled the new temple. Then Ezekiel saw water. It came from under the threshold of the temple, and it flowed east. A man with a measuring rod led Ezekiel along it. After 1,000 cubits, the water came up to his ankles, another 1,000, and it reached his knees, another 1,000, his waist. After the next 1,000, the river was too deep to cross, deep enough to swim in. It flowed down into the Dead Sea, the saltiest, deadest water on earth. And when the river entered, the Dead Sea became fresh. Fish swarmed, and fishermen stood on its banks. On either side of the river grew trees, fruit trees of all kinds, and their fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. 600 years later, on the last day of a great festival in Jerusalem, the source of this river stood up in the temple courts and named himself, Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink, and whoever believes in me, rivers of living water will flow from within them. And on the last page of the Bible, an exile on a different island saw the same river still flowing. Then the angel showed me the river of the water of life, flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, and the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. Ezekiel was given visions no other prophet saw, yet the lessons underneath all of it are simple enough for any of us to take home tonight. The elders in the hidden room whispered in the dark, The Lord does not see us, but he was standing in the room with them. The rooms you hide in are not hidden. There is no version of you God has not already met. So stop performing. When the glory walked out of the Jerusalem temple, God was already with the exiles by the foreign canal. He had been in Babylon with his people the whole time, and he was never stuck in a building. If your life right now does not feel like home, he is not somewhere else. He is exactly where you have been driven. The exiles came to hear Ezekiel speak, and they sat down and they listened, and they left without changing. The hardest thing in the spiritual life is not hearing the truth. It is what you do with it after you have heard. Choose the harder thing. In the vision, the voice of the exiles came through. Our hope is gone. We are cut off. And they were wrong. The place you feel cut off from is a place God still has access to. There is no part of your story too dead for his voice. So stop agreeing with the lie. And remember this: the same glory that walked out of the temple walked back in. The path of return uses the same road as the path of departure. Whatever you have walked out of, God knows the way back. Tell us in the comments which Bible story we should cover next, and subscribe so you never miss one, because that truly means the world to us. Share this with someone walking through their own exile, and please keep us in your prayers. And if the vision of the bones moved you, remember that it foretold a resurrection, the story of the final days of Jesus, and the morning the grave itself was opened. God bless you.